Almost every bank angler makes the same mistake, and it's costing them fish on every spot they walk up to. They cast too far. You walk up to a good-looking bank, and the first thing you do is rear back and bomb one out toward the middle, as far as you can throw it. And the whole time, the bass you're after are sitting way closer than that, tucked in tight along the bank, on an edge you just launched your lure straight over the top of. So today, I'm going to show you how to find that edge from shore, without a boat and without any electronics, and how to fish it the right way, because it changes how many bites you get on every spot you walk up to. So start with why you throw it out there in the first place, because it isn't random. When you walk up to a spot, you want to cover water, and a long cast feels like you're doing that. It also just feels right to fish away from yourself, away from the bank you're standing on, because that's where you figure the fish are, out where it's deeper and quieter. So you send it as far as it'll go. And that open water always looks promising, because there's nothing out there telling you it's empty. The trouble is, all that wide open water in the middle is usually the deadest part of the lake, and the fish are sitting behind your bait right back where you started. To understand why, look at how a bass actually lives. A bass is an ambush predator. He's not built to chase bait around the open water for hours. That burns way more energy than he ever gets back out of the meal. He's built to hide up against something, sit dead still, and wait for the food to come to him, then blow out and grab it in one short burst. So a bass spends his whole life looking for a place where he can stay hidden and still have food funnel right past him. And that place is almost always an edge, some line where one kind of water turns into another. And the good news for you, standing on the bank, is that a lot of the best edges on the whole lake run right along the shoreline you're already standing on. You don't need a boat to reach them. You're standing on top of them. Anytime two things meet, you've got an edge, where the grass stops and open water starts, where the shallow water along the bank drops off into deep, a hard gravel bank turning into soft mud, or the shade line under an overhanging tree or a dock. Bass pile up on those lines because an edge does two jobs at the same time. It gives the fish something to hide against, and it funnels bait right along the seam. And plenty of those seams are within an easy cast of shore or sitting right at your feet. And this isn't a guess. Biologists who've watched bass up close, in tanks and in little viewing rooms built right into the water, see the same thing over and over. The fish don't scatter around at random. They line up on edges, holding tight on some seam or some change in the bottom, and they wait there. On most lakes, only about 10% of the water actually holds bass, and that 10% is nearly all edges. The wide open middle you keep throwing at is mostly dead water. You can fire casts into it all day and never touch a thing. So the fish are on the edges, and a lot of those edges are within reach of the bank. Now you need to find them. There are 4 kinds worth hunting for, and from shore, you can find every one of them with your own eyes, a map, and what you feel through the rod. The first is the weed line. Anywhere grass stops and open water begins is an edge, and it's got 2 sides to it. There's the outside edge, out where the deep water meets the front wall of the grass. And there's the inside edge, that strip of open water between the back of the grass and the bank, right at your feet. From shore, that inside edge is gold, because most people walk up and cast clean over it, out to the middle when there's a bass sitting in that little gap a rod's length away. Put on a pair of polarized glasses so you can actually see the grass line under the surface, and fish that inside strip first before you send anything long. The second edge is the depth change, a drop-off where the bottom falls away from shallow to deep. Without a boat and a graph, you find this a few ways. First, read the bank itself. A steep bank that drops off fast usually keeps dropping under the water, so the deep water is close, within a cast. A flat, gradual bank means the shallow water runs way out, and the drop is too far to reach. So you want the steeper banks. Second, watch the water color, because darker water is deeper water, and the line where light green turns to dark is often sitting right over your drop. And third, let your bait tell you. Cast out. Let it sink all the way down. Count it down. Then reel in slow and feel for the spot where the bottom falls away under it. Once you found that line, you found the edge, and you can fish it every time you come back. A cheap paper contour map or a free lake map on your phone will also show you which banks have deep water swinging in close, so you're not guessing which spots to walk to. The third one is the bottom change, and you find this one purely by feel. Drag your bait slowly across the bottom and pay attention through the rod. When it goes from ticking across hard gravel or rock to dragging through soft mush, you just crossed a bottom transition. Crayfish and baitfish relate to those changes, so the bass do too. You can fish a bank for years and never realize there's a little patch of rock out there in the mud that's holding nearly every fish on the spot. The fourth one is the big one. It's where two edges cross each other. A weed line that runs right over a drop-off. A point sticking out from the bank that also has a bottom change on it. Wherever two edges stack up on top of one another, that's where the biggest fish on the spot is going to be. So, from the bank, the best places to walk to are points, where deep water comes in close on both sides, and any spot where you can see grass or wood sitting right where the bank drops away. Alright, so now you can find your edge from shore. But knowing where it is only gets you halfway, because most bank anglers still cast at it wrong. They plant their feet, face the water, and throw straight out at a right angle to the bank, which drags the bait straight across the edge instead of along it. Think about what that does to your bait. When you cast straight out over a weed line or a drop that runs parallel to the bank, your lure crosses that edge for about 1 second, and then it's out in the dead water for the whole rest of the retrieve. You get one tiny window per cast, so instead, walk down the bank a ways and cast at an angle down the length of the edge, so your bait rides along that seam the entire way in. If a weed line runs parallel to the shore, stand at one end of it and throw, so your retrieve follows it, right down the line. Same cast, same effort, but now your lure sits in the strike zone the whole retrieve instead of 1 second of it. You can see the difference on any bank with a grass line running along it. Stand square to the bank and cast straight out, over and over, and you might pick off one dinky little fish, because your bait only touches that grass edge for a second on each cast. Now take 10 steps down the bank and cast so your bait comes back parallel to the grass, riding right along the edge the whole way. You can get bit 2 or 3 times off the same stretch you've been chopping across all morning. Same water, same lure. The only thing that changed is the angle you were throwing. And one more thing that matters a lot more from the bank than it does from a boat. Fish the water closest to you first and get to it quietly. The fish tucked against the bank right at your feet are the easiest ones on the whole spot to spook. If you walk up stomping and immediately rip a long cast out over them, you've blown the best fish there before you even started. So come in soft, make your first few casts short, right along that near edge, and then work your way out from there. Then match your bait to the kind of edge you're on. On a subtle inside grass edge in clear water, go light and quiet. Something like a wacky rigged worm that falls slow and lands right on the line without spooking anything. On a hard drop-off or a bottom change, get something down there that crawls. A jig or a Texas rig that hugs the bottom and climbs up the ledge so the bass feels it coming right through his zone. If you're covering a long weed edge and you want to find the active fish fast, throw something you can move quickly along the grass. A square bill or a swim jig that ticks the tops and falls off the edge. And anytime there's grass matted up on the surface near the bank, keep a frog tied on, because a bass sitting up under that mat is looking straight up, waiting for something to cross the roof over his head. One honest thing before you go try this. Fishing edges the right way is harder, and it costs you. When you run a bait tight along a weed line or crawl it over a rock pile, you're going to hang up more, and you're going to lose more baits. That's just part of it. But that's also the tell. The angler who's catching them is fishing right where the snags are, down in the nasty stuff on the edge. The one who walks home with a clean lure and a full box of baits spent the whole day throwing at the safe, empty middle. So next time you walk up to a spot, before you rear back and bomb one out toward the middle out of pure habit, stop for a second. Look at the water right in front of you first. Find the nearest edge. whether that's an inside weed line, the first drop off the bank, or a shade line under a tree. Fish it quietly, fish along it instead of across it, and work your way out from there. Do that, and you're going to be surprised how many fish were sitting a rod's length away the whole time. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time.